Hi everyone, Nemo here. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, as always, be sure to subscribe and stick around. Now, today is a momentous day because we have assembled the BRITVENGERS. They've been affectionately dubbed that for a little while now, but it is the voices that make up this new British movement, hence the eye patch. I am the Nick Fury of this situation, gathered them all together, and let's meet them, shall we? Let's get this unruly lot out and talking. Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hi. So I'm gonna go round and get everyone to introduce themselves real quick. So I'm gonna start, ladies first, with Jane.
Hi everyone, I'm Jane Christie. I co-host the 21st Century Saints podcast with my bestie Alana Wilson-Bryce. We generally go out on a Wednesday night and talk about how the Mormon experience is being lived here in the United Kingdom and around the world.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. Right, and then I'm going to go next, of course, to our man Peter Bleakley.
Hello, I'm Peter Bleakley. I run the Mormon Civil War podcast, exploring the crisis in the church between Christians and Pharisees and liberals and conservatives, and how that's all playing out and the implications for the church and its survival.
Excellent. And actually, I forgot. I'm going to go back to Jane for a second because I want you to tell the audience which BRITVENGER are you?
Oh, I don't know. So my Alana, who's not with us tonight because she's poorly, is a rocket raccoon, and I suppose I would be the sidekick. A Peter Quill, someone who thinks they're funny but are not really.
Okay, and Peter?
Right, I can't even remember the one you said I am. I'm not that nerdy about the Avengers, I'm afraid. And someone else.
Doctor Strange, I believe it was.
Doctor Strange, we'll go with that.
There you go.
I've got my halo. Look, my portal is in the roof.
All right, and then up next we have the fantastic Julian Heath.
Hi, I'm Julian Heath. I am one of the Sunstone UK team. Yeah, am I supposed to say who I am?
Yeah.
Well, other than Julian, my alter ego. I think I see myself as the fat Thor of the Avengers, but not Thor when he's let himself go a little bit, and he's shadow of the man he once was. Yeah, I'll go with that.
There we go. And then finally, the newest member of the BRITVENGERS, of this new British movement, is a man who comes to you all the way from Kolob. It is Priesthood Dispatches.
Correct. Thank you. Greetings from... It's actually a planet near the star of Kolob. And it's my neighbour that I'm opposing, Elohim over the fence. But yes, Priesthood Dispatches is a place where we swap war stories, comical war stories about our time at church. So everyone is welcome to shoot the shit at Priesthood Dispatches.
Nice. So it's almost like Elohim's been letting his cat do turds in your garden, and now you're getting revenge, right? Is that where we're at?
It is, yeah. And I'm the Hulk. So,
oh yes, so Priesthood Dispatches is the Hulk. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to talk about the story of how all this kind of came about a little bit. I was contacted by a source who let me know that 3 apostles would be coming over on Halloween night to speak to us, and I was told that earlier this week. And then on Thursday, I believe it was, we got a message in the BRITVENGERS chat from Jane. Sorry, I will keep getting them confused. From Jane, who told us all that that essentially this was going to happen, and went one better because her source gave us the letter, which I will read to you all now. Let me pull that up on screen. There we go. So, this letter reads as follows. Dear Presidents, we are pleased to announce a special state conference broadcast on Sunday the 31st of October 2021. 10 a.m. local time, for all individuals, families and friends of the states and districts in the United Kingdom and Ireland. In addition, on Saturday the 30th of October 2021, 2 p.m. local time, There will be a special devotional broadcast for all youth and young single adults in the United Kingdom and Ireland. In preparation for these special meetings, we invite you to cancel or reschedule any previously planned meetings or events that would hinder participation in these live broadcasts. Links for both broadcasts will be distributed closer to the date. Please inform all leaders and members of your stake or district. Both the Special Stake Conference and Devotional will be conducted under the direction of President M. Russell Ballard, Acting President of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He will be accompanied by Elder Jeffrey R. Holland and Elder Quinton L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and their wives, Sister Patricia Holland and Sister Mary Cook. Elder Massimo De Feo, Europe Area President, will also be in attendance. We hope these meetings will strengthen all those who participate and be an opportunity to receive personal revelation as living prophets give counsel and direction. You may wish to invite members to spiritually prepare now, that they might feel love and strength from a personal knowledge and witness of Jesus Christ, with an increased desire to participate in the work of salvation and exaltation. Let's get everyone on the screen. I think it's very interesting, and this is where I want to start, that 3 apostles are coming over. And my source tells me that they're coming here for a church history trip as well, so they are going to be here in the UK in person. So we've got 3, one of whom is the acting president of the Quorum, are going to be here. What do we think of that?
Have we really got 3 though? Is it really 3? Because I don't know about the rest of you, but anyone after Uchtdorf, I don't really recognise. I don't know what that is. In fact, there must be several of them now. I don't even know their names. Yeah, it's like you've got the proper ones, and then after Uchtdorf, it's kind of like.
Well, no, these 3 are all proper ones. They're all top 3 in succession.
Yeah. So the next in line president of the church is Dallin Oakes. After that is Ballard's, then Holland's. So we've got 2 of the next ones coming. And I think they're probably also keen to come or chosen because they've got British connections. They also have missions here. And Holland and Cook are actually mission companions. There's a lot of, my buddy could be an apostle with me. That kid from the mission would be good.
Can I just say,
Cookie.
That's so typical, isn't it? We've all had those meetings in the past where they come over and they always, whoever it is, they'll always start with their kind of tenuous connection to Britain.
Yeah.
You know, I love Britain because I serve my mission here, or I love Britain because my great grandma was from Britain, or my best mate's dog is from Britain, or whatever. and we like that's really going to endear them to us, and we don't care. We just don't care. It's like, oh yeah, right. So you recognise that Britain exists. Well done. That's great. That is brilliant.
Well, recognising that Britain exists, I think, is a really important thing, because in America, you know, where they all live there, they go to worship there. I would imagine that if you're in church in Utah, you've seen apostles, right? While they're doing the shopping and stuff. This doesn't happen. Not only is it 3 that we're getting right now, the last time I saw an in-person meeting with an apostle, 10 years, something like that, when Elder Grumpy Face came.
Narrow that down.
Elder Bednar. Looking very serious. And so people have, it's not that there's not been anyone since or before, it's just they don't come a lot, right? So the fact that this is happening at all is big news. The fact that there's 3 is unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think along with whatever tenuous link, we're going to be re-educated about the part that Great Britain played in building the church and staying in the church.
Because we might have forgotten.
Yeah, but the thing is, yes, it's great that for those people, was it 30,000 or something like that, were fooled into going to be polygamous wives and farmers in the Great Desert. But those people are there like ancestors. They're not ours. It's not like they're coming to say your grandfathers fought the war for us, be proud of them and different things. they're just blowing their own trumpets by coming across and saying our great granddads left these shores for Utah, and it's kind of that great round circle that just comes back to self
aggrandizement.
I think
it's I mean, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it feels a little bit like it's just an attempt to endear us to them, and I prefer if they're just out of pork pie. It's just like,
if I don't see any of them walking out of Greg's, they've failed their mission.
Into Greg's, then they're British. Then they've got a British connection.
If he's at one first thing in the morning when they're hotter than the interior of the sun and survived, then he's the man for me.
I will
return
return
what they have to say.
PD will return to church.
I will return to church if someone gets a photo of one of them with a 0% Guinness. If someone says you need to try some of this local fare, and they do a Guinness 0 now, but that would be amazing, like Ballard with a little Guinness tash.
So, as an active Mormon,
as I say, you're not the only one.
Oh, absolutely! I know. I used to say I was the only one, and because you're such a rebel. I'm the naive, innocent one. There's something quite shut up. There's something quite endearing about the fact that, like every tourist who comes to the United Kingdom does that. They come to rediscover their history or to talk about connections they've made. So there's something really quite sweet about the fact that they're coming to do that too. We can expect that. We all roll our eyes a bit, and but it's something quite natural about it. It's sweet.
But then this is three apostles. That's all we get. There's three apostles. So why do we think they're doing this? Why do we think they are sending three apostles in person to the UK? Basically, as soon as they could, as soon as travel restrictions have started opening up, they're doing it. Why?
Well,
why now?
Thing that comes out has been coming out of everyone's mouth. The first thing that's been typed in chats from the sort of progressive, nuanced or ex-Mormon community is shouting the words, "Is this the British rescue? Is this what's happened?" So that was kind of my instinct too. Does the United Kingdom, the Church in the United Kingdom is really, really struggling. Is this an attempt to address that?
Yeah, because it's a case of one apostle isn't unusual. I've spoken about how I had download jokes just appear in my little ward in the Midlands when I was a youth, and I once was such a church fanboy that I got up at 4 a.m. to drive from Manchester to London to hear D. Todd Christopherson speak to a parliamentary committee on religious freedom, and then got a photo with him outside with a bunch of other YSA. Right, that's what I did with my time at university. So it's not unusual for them to be here. I went and saw Holland speak in Oxford when they came down. They spoke at the colleges. They come over, but three of them is a massive, I think, show of force.
Full court press.
Full court press.
So
absolutely,
it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we need to understand the context then, that there's these two other rescues. So there was the Boise rescue, Idaho rescue, I think. No, the Swedish rescue came first, 2010. Where there are a lot of Swedish members very concerned that their questions were not being answered. They were starting to learn from the internet and everything about the real history of the church, and getting huge questions that the church wasn't providing the answers for. And it was just before the Gospel Topics essays came out. And so they sent an apostle and a church historian who failed horribly to be of any use whatsoever. And not surprisingly, I think estimates are about 40% of the members in Sweden left afterwards. And then you had the Boise rescue in 2015 because Denver Snuffer was getting a lot of converts from church members there. So, we're over. It would have been another 5 years precisely for a British rescue last year, but obviously COVID hit. So maybe they stir every 5 years. Do
you think we're getting too much influence as a British movement between all of us? Do you think we're getting too much attention, and it's our fault?
It's definitely us. I
think it's you in particular, Peter. I think it's you in particular, Peter. They know.
It's not my
Have you not got
fault.
the appointment yet to be flogged in front of the courthouse?
That's
These
I
three-
might
three old
now.
men.
My we had a ward conference today, and my wife stood up and very bravely voted opposed twice.
Yes,
So
excellent.
yeah, the flogging may be nigh. We'll see.
Well, Paul Toscano's, who, you know, lovely to have him here and speaking with us. He
Hello,
said they
Paul.
sent 3 apostles to express their concern for the spiritual condition of the LDS Church in the UK and Ireland, which is, I believe, a sincere concern. Now, feels like a little bit of a backhanded compliment there, Paul, but I'll let that one slide. I do take your point. I think they are sincerely concerned about the spiritual state of the church here. Like I mentioned, they have been talking to us in firesides and all sorts of things previously to this. You know, Julian would know about this particularly. Julian, tell me just how many times did Solihull get someone of significance from Utah beaming in on a Sunday evening during lockdown?
No, almost. It felt like almost every week.
Yeah.
You know, very, very regularly. Very
BYU
regularly.
historians, Elder Holland. I'm trying to think of any others.
Wilcox.
Brad Wilcox did something up in
Yep.
the north. They had the
Patrick Mason
Givenses,
came on
Reading. Who came on? Patrick Mason.
Patrick Mason.
Yeah,
did-
twice.
Yeah, did 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the church and its apologists and its employees have been they've been speaking to us for a long time, and I think maybe that's where some of these concerns have perhaps been fed back to them. Is that, you know, the when they've been coming over for these firesides and they've been perhaps poorly attended, or they've had a chance to speak to leaders and they've said, look, we're struggling. And I think you combine that with now that we're trying to get bums back in seats. Dan Lachoke said at the last conference, didn't he, that he wants people back in buildings. We're not seeing that happening. What do we think?
Can I just address your
MPG,
question
Yeah.
about whether we had any kind of influence on it? And I know it was kind of said a little bit tongue in cheek. I really hope we didn't. I sincerely hope that we haven't. I really think that. I think personally, for people that leave, it's in many ways it's inevitable. It's just they find themselves through a natural course of things, you know, especially because of the internet really helps. You know, all the information that's out there now, and I think that for a large number of people, you know, especially when you think about what we have been taught, the way that we've been brought up to seek for truth, and to you know, and to take our religion very, very seriously. That's the thing I would say about British Mormons. I think it's much more likely that in somewhere like Utah, you get that kind of spectrum of Mormonism in a similar way to over here. You would get a spectrum of Catholicism, a spectrum of Anglicanism. In Mormonism, if you meet somebody in the UK that identifies as a Mormon, then generally you can say, you can take for granted that they're going to go to church every Sunday, they pay their tithing, they live the word of wisdom, they hold a calling. I think it's a pretty safe bet. You know, we don't really get so I know that the term Jack Mormon that you kind of get in the US, we don't really get that. You're either a member of the church with kind of all the bells and whistles, or you don't identify as a Mormon anyway, so you know no one would ever really know. And so because we take it so seriously, I think that you have to for most people they find themselves naturally kind of on that track, you know, that will lead them to start to question things, lead them to start to see things a little bit differently, to the way that maybe the things are portrayed by the church, and they're kind of like the official correlated version of things, and therefore they're going to go down one of two paths. They're either going to kind of say, well, I don't believe it anymore, and throw in the towel. One of 3 ways. They could go Peter's way and kind of and speak out so much that they end up getting kicked out, or like Jane, you know, and I don't feel free to kind of correct me on this, Jane, if you feel like I'm misrepresenting you, but people that want to stay in but know the problems and, you know, trying to find ways to make it work for them. So I think it's kind of a natural, just a natural kind of way of affairs, and I think that maybe the role that we play is that while people are going through that process, we stop them from thinking that they're crazy, that we actually allow people to feel that they can legitimately question things, to feel that they're not the only ones, and there is somebody else out there that is speaking with their voice as well. Certainly, you know, I mean, I'm not here. I think it is important for me to state I'm not here representing Sunstone UK, but when Laura and I got involved in Sunstone UK, that was really kind of number one on our priorities, to just create a safe space where people from all over the kind of Mormon spectrum could come together in a respectful way and kind of discuss these things. So, you know, I hope that we're not part of any kind of problem. I hope that to some people at least, we offer something of a solution.
I think so, particularly because here we don't have that. We don't have that where we're surrounded by the culture in the same way you would be in Utah. We're not surrounded by that, so there's nothing for us to fall into if you find yourself not being Orthodox anymore. You can't just continue to be part of that community, because that community you had to work towards, you had to travel for, you had to go to every Sunday. It wasn't your next door neighbour, you know. So that I think that's right, and hopefully we do provide that. PD was going to say something, then Peter jump in.
I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, John.
Do we think that there could be some kind of Brexit influence here? No, seriously, right? With regard to annexing the UK and Ireland from the European area. And the reason I say that is because I think Europe traditionally has been a poor hunting ground for them. But the UK and Ireland, being English speaking, with already a Protestant kind of foundation, has been rich pickings until recently. So do we think that there could be some sort of reorganization as well? Because I do think a lot of the country is quite xenophobic, hence Brexit. And when the area presidency are purely continental European, do we fully connect with that area presidency, or would an area presidency from the UK and Ireland be able to revive the church here with a specific focus rather than
perhaps
the whole of Europe?
And I think if we are going to see anything, we'll see some sort of procedural change, I think, because what this administration of church leadership under Nelson has shown us is that the things they do change are policy. The things they do change are procedures and ways that things are done. Admin. It's just admin. So if they are going to do anything of significance worth talking about, I think PD, you're onto something, that there's there's going to be an administrative theme to it. Certainly, I would agree.
I don't think they'll do anything.
I don't think they're even. I don't think they're even that imaginative, though. Like, that would be sensible. Like, to have a leadership to focus on Britain and Ireland and its specific needs and so on. And this is something that I think it was James Talmage actually worked really hard for back in the day. There used to be a Europe area, and he argued strongly for. It was either him or Hubie Brown or someone worked hard to actually create a British area and a British mission, as it was then. I think that might help. I think what this will boil down to, will anything they say actually address the real issues and concerns that are causing people to leave or stay away? Our hopes are very low, because they totally fail to do so in general conference time after time. But will they, presumably, if they can get away from their travelogues about their time in Britain, which they will keep calling England, and then someone will kick them in the leg to remind them there's Ireland, Scotland and Wales as well. That's happened before.
We've got Elizabeth Brogan here saying that.
Yes, exactly. There you go. And I'm a keen Brexiter on the basis of freedom, not about being xenophobic. On the same reason for my sort of crusade against the current oppressive leadership of the church is democracy matters and self-governance and things like that. And you know, you don't have to be xenophobic to be anti-EU, because the EU was a huge bureaucratic machine.
Right. I'm going to take the Brexit talk and I'm going to steer us away from that. Jane, you look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I think coming back to the is it us? I think we, because it's one of the questions we all as a group get asked a lot. You know, how, you know, are you going to get kicked out? What kind of feedback do you get from church about this, you know, podcasting journey that you're on? The reality is nobody really cares that much, unless we were doing something to totally disrupt and be really, really offensive. Nobody really, you know,
Well, like telling everyone to vote opposed.
Well, yeah, until last week, you know, and I think the reality is that we are reflecting a moment in time that will it address the concerns? It'll certainly address some immediate concerns of people coming back to church who want to be there and have this, you know, really good experience that will last them for many, many years to come. Active members will love this. You know, my friend Charlotte, who broke the news, Charlotte isn't a member of the, you know, has left the church, is now affiliated with another faith. Charlotte is a wonderful trans woman who's telling me, I'm really excited about this. So I think, you know, that is going to make an immediate sort of difference in that there'll be a nice buzz around it. Will that change anything long term? Will it affect the fact that we are hemorrhaging people? Oh, absolutely not.
No.
You see, I know we don't know where.
And then we got PD and then Julian. Sorry.
And I know we don't know where it is yet, but the smart money, if they're paying to fly all of these people over and with their wives, etc., a full 737 load, and they're, as it says in the letter, we know they're coming in person, but they're going to be broadcasting the meeting around the UK and Ireland to the local chapels. We can only assume that surely there will be a congregation, because if there's no congregation and they're just stood in an empty chapel, they could have done that from Salt Lake and not spent the money. But as well, what they could have done, or what they might do, is have 3 separate meetings all running at the same time, each presided over in Scotland, the middle of England, and southwest England or Ireland even, or somewhere like that. 3 different locations, so they can press more flesh in this kind of ego boosting, give everyone a good memory following COVID thing.
It seems as though the letter says they're going to be together. But I get what you mean, because who else would, if there's no one there to stand up to them as they enter, then, I mean, is it even worth it?
But if I was still TBM,
yeah,
I know what they're going to say. It's just going to be a regurgitation of what they said 2 weeks ago at conference with, as we've already said, you know, some memories about the UK and previous visits or missions. So the message isn't going to be anything special. It's the opportunity to meet one of them is probably more special to a TBM or an investigator, or a struggling diehard, member, to be able to actually shake their hand and have that experience, because that's something you always say. I've seen people saying it in the comments, I shook Monson's hand, I shook such and such's hand. Whereas if that doesn't happen, who's really going to remember it in 5 or 10 years' time?
Well, then you reckon they'll give me the chance to, I'm a concerned member.
You're not getting within a mile of them.
Yeah. So, Julian, you're going to say something. And then
Peter. So I think that's a really good idea, PDD. I think you. I think that would be lovely. And if this really is a rescue, then obviously they'll be watching this, because I'm sure they're fully aware of all the things that are being discussed over in the UK. So they'll be watching this, so they might take that on board. I think actually going out and meeting all the members like that, you're 100% correct. I think that is what will make a difference. what I was going to say is, if you look at the question of whether or not it is actually a rescue, because it might not be, say they've just kind of opened up restrictions, we'd all like a holiday, wouldn't we? Why not? Should we fancy a trip to Britain? It might just be that.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't really make any difference. Whether it is or not, it doesn't make any difference, because I think, like you've just said there, Peter, or either Peter or PD, I can't remember, but it will be the same. They'll just say the same thing anyway. They'll say the same thing, and the active members will love it. They absolutely will, and that's great. I think that's fabulous. I didn't. I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch any of conference, but I'm sure if I did, did I really miss out? I'm sure if I did, then I probably would have thought, just the same tired stuff. But as an active member, I probably would have felt really kind of bolstered by it, and I think general conference is a little bit, and I guess you could say this for this meeting that they hold as well. Any kind of church meeting. And I know it sounds like I'm being disrespectful. I don't mean it in this way, but I think anything like that, it's a bit like a fortune cookie or the horoscopes. You will read it and you will find something in there that you go, yes, that is just speaking to me. That is the message that I needed to hear. And I think that's what will happen. I think regardless of whether it's and there's another part of me that feels like that somebody commented earlier about it being a sincere concern, and I a little bit doubt that sincerity. And maybe this is just a reflection on me and the awful person that I am. But is it just, like when I was active in the church, I didn't, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't go out and do my home teaching because I just had that absolutely overwhelming Christ-like love for those people I was serving. When when the sons of Mosiah go out to the Lamanites and they just feel that they're so overwhelmed with the desire to save their brethren. I didn't feel that. I'm sure to some extent I did, but there was also me just wanting to do the right thing, so I would get, the best possible planet I could in the next life. That's out the window now. But you think if they're sitting, if they're sitting, but I guess what I'm trying to say is they're sitting in their meetings. Someone's saying, right, UK is not looking very good at the moment. A lot of people leaving. What should we do? They go, let's go and visit. Who's up for a trip to Britain? And they'll go and visit.
Have a look.
And they'll give their little stories connecting themselves to Britain and leave us with an apostolic blessing, and that's it. So I think whether it is a rescue or not, it doesn't really make any difference. It will be the same. It'll be the same thing anyway. And the people that want to hear that message will hear it and they'll love it and it'll be great. And
speaking of hearing the message, someone's just asked us. Ray Lawler, apologies, Ray, has said, is anyone planning on recording these meetings? Hands up if you're planning on recording the meeting.
I'm not going to confirm or deny.
But devil's advocate to Julian's point about sitting in meetings, what do you think is the more concerning figure to them? Is it the activity rate of people in the country? So if they were to look at the whole world following COVID, to look at activity rates, we know that the church is booming in Africa and different things. But then to contrast that and take the member numbers away and look at tithing receipts and look at where tithing receipts are down the most.
Paul is with you on this.
We know that in Africa, the tithing receipts might be up, but due to local influences, wages and different things, even though by member being a full tithe payer, there might be more full tithe payers in Africa than say there is in Germany or the UK or Australia. But in these first world countries where there just is more money, even poorer people like me, make more money, unfortunately, than probably really hardworking people in these other countries. And we're not paying.
I've heard they're short of a few bob as well at the moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think if they're in any way financially realistic, they know the tithing means nothing whatsoever. They've created a financial behemoth that's larger than most of the nation states of the earth. They don't need another penny from tithing. So I honestly don't think they might see that as indicative of spirituality and support. But as a raw financial thing, the money means absolutely nothing to them, because they get 2 billion surplus every year that they can't find anything to spend on except Google shares. So it is, I guess, an indication of the people who adore them. It's about their own egos. It's about losing people to praise them.
What
we got a counterpoint there,
again,
guys.
How realistic are they? Go on.
The apostles don't know about that, though, do they? No, seriously, isn't it? So when this all came out, they'll just be like, "Oh, Russell, is that real?" And they'll be like, "No," and trust me. So they don't know about that because only what is
the presiding bishopric.
Presiding
bishopric and first presidency were the only ones who knew.
So to them, they could be getting the same, shit cake that the rest of the TBMs get, which says, here you go, we've got no money.
I would counter that argument as well, Peter, and say that you don't accrue that amount of money without caring about the pounds. Do you know what I mean? That you get that amount of money from counting the pennies.
And I think
they're at a point where it's so big, though, you don't need pennies anymore, because it's going to be $1 trillion in 30 years. I mean, that's crazy. Sorry,
absolutely. But I also think that we can underestimate the fact that it is the biggest indicator of church activity and commitment. So if you had to boil it down to one indicator, that would be the one. So if the tithing receipts are going down, then that is going to be ringing alarm bells. What interests me is that I feel like this is a real opportunity for exciting things to happen. Over the next couple of weeks, everyone in the world is going to be talking about things that are happening in Scotland. We've got the COP26 meeting, where it's the World Climate Change Conference. World leaders are flying in from everywhere. Religious leaders are flying in, and we've got our church leaders who are coming in a couple of weeks beforehand. We've got the Community of Christ teams who are constantly speaking up about climate change and earth stewardship, that kind of thing. And I just think, it would be so nice to have had some kind, or it would be so nice to have some kind of discussion about that. We really avoid it as a church, and it's a shame. I think a lot of good could be done there. I also think we can undersell the fact that we've got members who, if a temple were to be announced tomorrow in Scotland, Ireland, or Wales, there would be tears of joy. Mm-hmm. The membership here are aching for that. Those are the questions that are constantly being asked when opportunities to ask questions do arise.
When will Scotland get a temple?
Yeah, and it's a really big deal for active Latter-day Saints here. I think the UK, especially Scotland, Ireland, Wales, especially the Celtic countries, just don't always feel seen. The handbook it's really quite Americanized. The church experience is very Americanized. So UK Latter-day Saints are just not getting to hear what we need to hear. In the podcast that Alana and I do, we always try to sort of bring it back to how are people actually experiencing this. My husband is the non-member. And I remember we were being asked to really pray because you're going to have a church area visitor who's going to, they're really pray because we want you to bring someone. We want them to be able to have a really spiritual experience. Everyone's preparing. And my husband, he ain't interested. But to my surprise, he came along one day and he's like, okay, I will go, but I'm not wearing a suit. I'm going to wear my jeans. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to wear my jeans too, if that will make you feel more comfortable. So we pitch up like a pair of rock stars, and it was awful. It was awful because it was almost like an ego trip for the people who were speaking. They wanted to talk about their own personal family histories. They wanted to talk about just things that my husband is like, what are they talking about? And we had to leave early, and we could see that the reaction that was coming from the stand was, it was really embarrassing, honestly. And I think that's what often is happening in the UK. So as an active member, if I go to a church meeting and I'm hearing these messages, you could be telling me anything and I'm going to be happy, because I'm just happy that you're there and you're telling me this stuff, and that's really great. But for the people who we're in crisis, our families have all left, I've got no friends anymore at church because everyone's gone, and I'm showing up and I need to hear something I can work with. Will you give me anything? And most often the answer to that is no.
Very well said. Thank you very much.
And that's why we started off so cynical. We spent quite a lot of time. Maybe we should have explained this, as I guess we have now, that we've had our lifetimes has been patronizing dreck from people that we traveled a long way to see. I remember going to the Royal Albert Hall, and again, it was prophets and their wives, and all they did was go on about how lucky we were to be sitting at the feet of the prophet. But then there was never a punchline. There was never any actual content. And this is kind of what President Nelson's been doing in conference a lot, building up to something and then not really delivering anything significant. So, yeah, I just want to come back to something Julian said, where he said, well, the active TBMs will love it and it's all fine and nothing much will change. I think that's not actually the case anymore. Because we're hanging by a thread. I'm surrounded by middle-level leadership who the light has gone out of their eyes, the famous light. They're exhausted, they're bored out of their skulls. They know it's not going anywhere. They haven't got the courage to actually question the leadership and blame them for why. But their kids, as you've already said, Jane, and others, their kids have left the church, and I'm looking at wards that have been rebooted back to branches. And amazingly, some of the old faithfuls are still there, but they've got nothing to show for decades of effort. And they're back to desperately trying to just fellowship one tiny investigator and maybe someone will join. And it's pathetic. So I honestly think that every time they fail to deliver, they lose more members. It's actually fatal. It's boring. It's uninteresting. It doesn't look like something dramatic occurred.
Because we live in a church that promises direct revelation from God, don't we? We live in a church that promises God's mouthpiece on the earth. God's mouthpiece is on the earth, and he is Russell M. Nelson. What has Russell M. Nelson done with that direct access to God that is noteworthy, particularly? Other than pronouncing the use of a nickname that his predecessor spent millions of dollars on as a major victory for Satan. Thus saith the Lord. Right? So you're absolutely right, Peter. I think as Brits we're a bit cynical anyway, but then it ramps up to 11 when people just don't live up to what we're told to expect from them.
He did say
again in that letter they're telling us to expect.
Sorry, we got a bit of delay going on. PD?
I was going to say he did say to take our vitamins and get some rest.
He did, so that's prophetic, right?
He changed the name of the church and he gave us the Jesus in the bathtub. And then
was that his saving us from COVID? Take some vitamins, get some rest, you'll be fine.
But then he can't have done, because he said at the April 2020 conference, little did he know that it would be COVID that would make the conference so memorable for him. So he didn't see COVID coming.
It's a bit like the Joseph Smith and the Book of Abraham thing. Joseph Smith thought he was doing one thing, so told everyone. But God was in the background, just like, no, not what you're doing, Joseph, but I'm not going to tell you. And he did that to Rusty as well. He let him say that, but didn't tell him why he said that. Like every good horoscope, it comes true eventually.
If you wait long enough.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point we could. So I was just going to say, maybe at some point we could talk about, well, what could they say that would turn it around? What would rescue the church in Britain?
I mean, let's go there. Let's do that.
But before we get onto that, though, because this
what would it
kind of
take? Yeah.
This sort of addresses that, I guess, to some extent. And that, so when I found out, one of the kind of feelings that I had was, how dare they? How dare they think they can come over here and rescue us? You know, not me, but like the membership. If you're the problem, leave us alone. We will rescue the church in the UK. You know, the people that are, you know, people like Peter and Jane and Nemo that are still active and, you know, and want the church to be what it can be, want it to fulfill its kind of potential destiny. They're the ones that could really make a difference. They're the ones that could actually rescue the church, but we're rescuing it from them. It's this kind of Salt Lake totalitarian church that is the problem. If you got rid of that, then I think actually we've got a lot of talent in the UK. We can sort it out ourselves. You know, wasn't it us that rescued them originally anyway? You know, we went over during Nauvoo and we rescued them then. Now just leave it. We can sort it out. If you leave us alone, we'll sort it out.
Absolutely. So what would we like to see? What would turn this around? The problems that the church is having in the UK, what would fix things?
I think that Jeffrey R. Holland will give a rerun of his holding the pulpit, shaking and saying, "Don't you dare leave. Don't you dare."
I've had him thump his fist at me in person.
Yeah. You know, I think that's, and it would be really refreshing if he said, "Don't you dare leave," because too many people already have. And actually said, in the last 15 years, activity rates have done this. It's done it because of the evils in the world and people not living the family proclamation. But if he just said, "We are here because we love you and you're all pissing off. So what can we do?"
Julian's got a comment on that. But I absolutely agree, PD. I think that would be so refreshing. They're like, we care that it's going badly. We want you to stay. Please stay, Julian.
Yeah, and that's what made me think of what I want to see, and I think what could make a genuine difference. And obviously, we're not just talking about the UK, because this is worldwide. It's bigger than the UK. But honesty, that's what I want to see, is honesty. And that's what you're talking about to some extent there, PDD, is a bit of honesty. You know, I would love, I think and this could work. You know, there are lots of other churches that work under this framework, but I'd love to hear them just say, "Look, we're just like you. You know, we haven't seen Jesus. We receive revelation just the same way. You know, we have a good feeling about something and we hope that it's come from God, and we're just trying our best. We're just doing our best, and you know, we've got a responsibility to try and kind of help everybody else, but we're all in this together. We're all just trying to work it out. You know, we're not the true church. You know, we're just a church that hopefully is helping some people find happiness. Hopefully is helping some people get closer to Jesus. Hopefully is helping some people get spirituality and closer to God, and being better people, and helping their neighbours, and, you know, living a Christ-like life. That's what we're trying to do. You know, we don't hold the keys to the celestial kingdom. You know, we're just trying to, a conduit to kind of help people. That's all we are.
But that would be to give up their authoritarianism. That would be for them, and they wouldn't do that.
That's what I mean when I say that is the problem. It's
Yeah.
the authoritarianism that is the problem,
Mhm.
and it is the problem as well in that we all know that it's bollocks. We all can. Sorry, but we can all see that, and we go, "Well, this is bollocks." We know that you're not in some kind of amazing direct line to God. We can see that. And so, yeah, that is the problem. That's what needs to go. And I'd feel much better about them if I could just see them for what they are, which is nice old men that are, trying to
They're not
help
nice.
people.
Some of them aren't even nice.
Donald makes a great point
They're not
here. What if they came to listen rather than to instruct? I think that actually flows beautifully off the back of what you just said there, Julian. If they could show the humility to just listen to us, right? Because this is one of the things about voting opposed that actually is very telling, is that in all this voting opposed that I've done, that PD's done, that Peter's wife has done, Peter can't because he's been excommunicated, sorry. In all this, no one actually listens.
No.
If they had the humility to realise that some of us have legitimate concerns and that maybe if they listen to them, they might hear us and they might be able to then help us, I think it would go a long way. What do you reckon, Jane?
I totally agree with. I love Donnell's comment about listening. I really want to agree with Julian. At heart, I do agree with what you're saying. But the part of me that, if I'm being really honest, I would love if you could come and use the power of the priesthood to come and fix it and make church a place where we can feel safe, where we can feel loved, where we can come to church on a Sunday and find Christ. That would be magic. But it's also, I think what Julian is saying is absolutely beautiful, because Alana and I did an episode last week where we were talking about mental health and the problems that come when we try to fix people and we try to fix their situations. We're a church that wants to fix things. We're a people who are practical and try to fix things. And no one has the right to fix us. No one has the right to fix me or my problems. They're mine, to do what I need to do with them. And so I love the idea of us being able to fix ourselves if we need to be fixed. I think there's something really beautiful and empowering there. And I think that process of us putting back together a church that has been broken, seeing what parts we want to keep, seeing what's not working, seeing what needs to totally change again from the ground up, that could be incredible. That could be what saves the church, like it did back in the Nauvoo days. It would require, exactly like our friend Donnell is saying, it would require church leaders and priesthood leaders to trust memberships. It would mean that they would have to sit down with Peter and they would have to tell Peter, we want you home, we want you here. It would mean that they would have to be some kind of acknowledgement that the things that when Nemo is doing his work through the podcast, and there are all of these active church members who are horrified about what you're saying and really needs the church to excommunicate you, that the church actively will love you and support you and make sure that your voice is respected and protected. That's the kind of church that I envision, where we are sitting in the pews with someone with whom I can fundamentally disagree, with someone who can vote opposed, and we can love each other as brothers and sisters in the gospel. The thing that we were promised that we would be able to do, we're not seeing. So I see possibilities if we could trust. Yeah.
But that's already happened in essence in the community of Christ. And I think at Sunstone was fantastic to actually meet with members of the community of Christ and learn what they did. And they went through this whole Reformation in the 80s and lost a large chunk of their membership. but now they are in that exact position where they sit with their equals. There was an apostle from the Community of Christ at Sunstone, UK, and had someone not pointed him out as an apostle, then you wouldn't have known. He was just another member who was there. There was no security detail. There was no airs and graces. He was a very nice gentleman, but just the same as everyone else. And I think they've come to a place now where they're able to disagree, and they're able to discuss things openly like adults, rather than having this authoritarian regime which stamps down on anything that is well, they don't even stamp down on dissenters or opposers. They just don't listen.
They just ignore them.
You know, it is if I can't hear you, it's not happening. So it's not even. I opposed, went to my stake president, and I just got it has been noted. And the whole thing about them standing up in general conference and saying, "Speak to your stake president," is such a silly thing to say, because on a ward and stake level, the stake president and the bishop have the authority to stop the calling happening if someone opposes with a good reason. But on a church level, if someone opposes a member of the First Presidency, then according to the Doctrine and Covenants, the Quorum of the 12, when they act as a quorum, has the same authority as the First Presidency and vice versa. So they can judge one another. So surely when they stand up and they say, if you were opposed to President Nelson, you need to speak to a member of the Quorum of the 12. Or if you are opposed to the Quorum of the 12, you need to speak to a member of the First Presidency. Stake president has no authority to go to the 70 and then carry it on up the chain to say, well, you lied about your aeroplane crash, so we're going to have a sit down and see about whether you remain president of the church.
Because didn't you email a member of the First Presidency of the Community of Christ?
Yes. Yeah, she emailed me back within an hour.
There we go. I promise you, I've been looking very hard for an email address for anyone at church headquarters that might listen to my opposing vote. If anyone can provide me with that's watching this, please let me know. It will be handled with great discretion, but I will send them my opposing statements. Because
I'll
our leadership...
Nemo.
All right.
I've got all their numbers.
There you go. Because opposition, even just trying to communicate, they don't want to speak with the lowly members of the church. I feel like they feel there's this idea that we're all fellow servants in the cause of Christ, and that is not the way I think the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 view themselves. I think they view themselves as very much above the rest of the membership of the church, and because of that, they seek to remove themselves. Julian, go on.
Okay, so firstly, I wanted to say, play devil's advocate a little bit and say, well, the membership of the LDS Church is much bigger than the Community of Christ.
Absolutely fair point.
So, just logistically, it would be a lot more difficult for them to just hand out their email addresses. But then
large companies manage it.
Yeah.
They have a system in place. But if the church really wanted to, they could make it work, but they don't want to, because why would they want to spend the money putting a system in place for people to oppose when it's always just been the attitude that, well, they're just the weirdos, or they're just the, just ignore them. We've already, sorry, it annoys me a bit that if you can't tell, 100 billion, okay, so we're talking
140 billion now. They did very well last year.
Yeah, but it blows my mind that anyone can be like that. They can't do it. That if they had, if it was a case of doing it for a baptism, that you had to get some sort of sign off from a member of the 12, to be baptized, they would make it happen because they want you to be baptized. If you had to get a sign off from a member of the 12 for some kind of temple recommend, they would make it happen. But it's for this, they don't want to make it happen. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But again, with the numbers in the church, then I guess they're allowed to when Nemo opposes, then I think it allows them to go, wow, there's always going to be a few nut jobs, aren't there? You know, you've got to account for a few weirdos, you know, with all of these membership.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sure that's probably, you know, well, possibly that's the way that they think. Yeah. So there is that.
I mean,
but I just want you raised that whole thing. Nemo, was it you that said about the whole standing up thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to bitch about that a little bit because that has always really bugged me. That's always bugged me. You know, I remember, in fact, the last. Oh, I've got to try and think now. The last time I was in the same building as an apostle, I think it was. I think it was Ballard. And it was at Harborne, and I was in because I had young kids. I was just in like a little side room, so you know I could stay seated and it not really seem like a protest. But everybody kind of stands up. In fact, that is the weird thing, isn't it? I'm in a side room. I'm not even in the same room, and when he comes into the hall, people stand up. It's like they can't see you. You know, maybe he could feel it. Maybe he could feel people disrespecting his office if they don't stand. But people stand up, and then he kind of tells them all to sit down, and then he says something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing here, and so I might be doing him an injustice. But he says something along the lines of, you know, I feel a bit uncomfortable when people do that. When people stand for me, it almost makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I know that you're not standing for me; you're standing for the office. And I just want to say, bollocks. That's rubbish. That's rubbish. If you
in Doctrine and Covenants, it says that you shouldn't follow people by virtue of the office they hold, but by their good works.
Yeah.
So,
yes, yeah. Good point. Well, fact checked there, Nemo. Maybe you should do like a podcast doing that kind of thing.
I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, and then Jane, then Peter. Whichever way you want to do it.
It's nonsense.
I'm actually just going to throw over to Peter because you know that this is something that you speak about a lot. In the United Kingdom, we don't have that kind of respect for
celebrity
standing up thing. It's just it's weird and creepy, and we tend to rebel against that.
I think we do it with our royalty because they genuinely are a symbol. They don't have any actual power to rule. We are a democracy, so it's
as
different.
Rebellious
it feels
Scots
different.
Tend not
to exactly. But some of the Scottish are very loyal still. By the way, health and safety warning, Julian. Mary Davidson in Ireland is a tough cookie grandma, and she will cross the Irish Channel and mess you up if you say we're talking about UK again and not add Ireland as well. It's a republic, and they're talking to them too. So I'm just warning you: do not mess with Mary. Yeah, it's this. I mean, so we do, in a sense, we're famous for kowtowing to royalty. But we do that almost as a game. We didn't do that when they had actual power. We chopped their heads off. You know, as soon as they get too uppity about themselves and their own power and think they can take it from us, we're like, well, who are you? And we have a civil war and kill them. And I think that, and as we've discussed, you know, it's just we're not impressed by people who are successful. And Americans are, and this is a culture clash thing. Americans are genuinely very respectful of the rich and people who do well because that's kind of what they're aiming for themselves, and they hope they'll get the same adulation if they get rich. and to put it in a nutshell. And they respect people who show off about their achievements. That's okay in their culture. Here you have to stay modest about it, and we only tolerate leaders who have self-deprecating humor. And President Hinckley and President Monson were brilliant at that. They were always laughing at themselves. They made themselves the butt of their jokes. They had that humility, and that was very endearing. And it was always, you know, at the time when Hinckley was close to death, I was like, it's going to change, everyone, because the next two guys do not have that gene. They take themselves incredibly seriously, Nelson and Oakes, and they don't have that warmth. And I think it's going to be really interesting when people have to declare Dallin Oakes to be the one true mouthpiece of God. I think there's going to be a lot of Brits who that is a step too far, and that will catch in their throat because they haven't felt nice about his talks and things. So I think what you've taught, when I asked the question, well, what could they say that would actually fix things? What would save the church in Britain? You've talked really powerfully about this idea of the relationship, the power relationship. Will the leaders listen to us? Will they respect what we have to say? Will they get wisdom from the collective hive mind of all of our experience? The answer is, of course, absolutely not. And they have no intention of doing so until it gets publicly embarrassing. But I think the other thing is there have to be some specific actions as well. It's not just about an emotional relationship, and they keep thinking it is. Every time they talk about in the face-to-faces with the young people about how to deal with faith crisis, and these people had these 3 questions. We had the talking general conference, and they never said what the questions were. They never ever answer the actual bloody questions. It's always treated as a mental illness. It's always treated as an emotional problem you have, a spiritual problem that you need to just go and feel warm and fuzzy and talk to some people who are faithful, and that will fix you. And that has been their narrative for the last several general conferences and the face-to-faces. So that's all they've got. So I think, in thinking about what could be the miracle and specific, I'm still trying to edit the video of my presentation at Sunstone UK. It's an absolute bugger, and I need a more powerful computer, but it will get out there. People in the comments have been saying, well, why do you care? Why do people still stay active? What is there to like about Mormonism? And there is stuff. And in that, I cover 25 things. So I'll just refer people in the comments to that.
When it goes up, we'll link it in the description.
Yeah, sure. I'm hoping to get it out in the next day or two. It's just being really slow. But the top problems that I was sort of identifying there that seem to emerge from the hive mind of the bloggernacle is simply lying, stealing, control freakery. They keep lying. They've told us epic lies in the past about almost every foundational truth of the church, where the Book of Mormon came from, where the Book of Abraham came from, where the priesthood came from. They've lied about the restoration of the priesthood. They've lied about the first vision. All these foundational truths they've lied about, and they keep telling lies even when they don't need to. Like Elder Cook lying at the last conference, saying that Joseph Smith was in jail because he was anti-slavery, when it was actually armed insurrection against the American government, for which he could have been executed. So the first thing to address is the lying, to apologize for lying to us all. And because that's the only thing that's going to hold the nuanced members who've discovered all the lies in long term, and maybe even bring a few people back. They need to acknowledge the lying, apologize, and commit to do serious fact checking before they ever say another thing in front of a pulpit. They won't, of course, but that's what it would take. That's what's needed.
So on
Secondly,
that theme,
stealing.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
go on.
I was just going to say on that theme, because I know time is running away. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just do it quickly. So stealing. They were meant to stop paying demanding tithing years ago when the church was self-sufficient, as promised by Joseph F. Smith in a conference a century ago. He said, when the church can live off the interest of its investments, tithing will end. We don't need it anymore. It's a means to an end. It's not a ritual in itself that has value. That's happened. So they need to announce no more paying tithing. Nemo's brilliant idea that he's doing the petition about, if you want to pay it to do good in your local community, give the money to charities, make it functionally do well. At the moment, they take more tithing than they need, and they're shoveling it into the American stock market. And if they got vast wealth, use it. Invest in developing countries. investing in infrastructure like China is doing to take over Africa, invest in roads and all the rest of it if you have to do that, not making nice houses around your new temple property, which is what they literally put in the propaganda between conference sessions about the Mesa, Arizona housing development. It was like a real estate advert. And use the money for good and stop robbing people, and apologize for robbing us and lying about the need for the money when they didn't need it.
Okay, and then control freakery.
Common consent votes. We've got to normalize voting opposed. And I think that's what this movement that we're trying to pioneer here in Britain, it has the potential to do. My wife today was incredibly brave. She stood up in front of her peers, in front of our ward, and broke the shibboleth. She destroyed the false idol of complete kowtowing to the leaders, and she voted opposed to the first presidency and the apostles. People need to see that happening as normal, because it is our right, and it shouldn't mean you're not a Mormon, because it's always been part of the system, and we used to be a democracy, and we could be again. That is so powerful. So I really encourage people to keep doing that, just so people see it. And people can vote again every time. There are 4 opportunities a year to do this. Vote opposed every ward conference. Vote opposed at your state conference. Vote opposed at the 2 sessions of general conference. They will ask, do you sustain this first presidency that's killing the church? And if you feel that way, you can vote opposed. And once that is normalized, which it kind of has been in general conference, because some brave people have been doing that already, we need to keep that momentum going. While they won't let us vote about an individual issue or an individual policy or a decision, all we've got left is to vote about the people making the decisions. We're not voting against the office necessarily. We're voting about what they're doing that's killing our church, depleting our wards, and meaning our children leave the church. And the other sort of final concretes is young people are not going to stay in a church that's racist, homophobic, and sexist. So they have to make structural, functional differences on those fronts. So there's a lot there, but they are quite simple. That's what it would take to save the church in Britain. That's it.
Okay, PD?
Yeah. I was just going to
start wrapping stuff up. Yeah.
Yep. The 31st of October is not just Halloween. It is also, and I doubt this is even in their mind, but for Protestant religions, it is also Reformation Day. So whether they've thought we'll go on that one fits Reformation Day, we're going to reform the UK and Ireland, or who knows. But I just thought that was interesting. Someone brought it up on Reddit the other day that it's Reformation Day as well. So
what I want to do, as speaking of Reformation and rebellion and sticking it to the man, what I want to do is I want to go around and ask you all to close. I want you to imagine, some of you may have been in this situation, when apostles visit missions and missionaries, they often walk down a line and shake hands with people, right? Funnily enough, the Queen does a similar thing. Okay? So it's another way in which they're acting like royalty. What I want you to share with the audience is, what would you say if you had the chance while shaking their hand to say something to them? You'd only get a sentence, you'd only get a few words.
I need to.
But what would you say? Let's try and keep it productive, PD, if we can. But what would you say? Let's start with Peter, because I reckon he's got something queued up ready.
Good Lord.
And
One
then
sentence,
we'll move around.
Peter.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I'd have to do
You'd have to kidnap them.
You'd have
Peter would have
to
to kidnap them, take them to his
tie
van,
them up and make
tie them up.
prison.
Got a few words for you.
Right. We'll come back to you then. PD, what would you say?
Yeah.
Other than the classic
I've got one actually.
F you, I think it'd just have to be to let them know that just be real. I think, like Julian said and Jane said, just be real, be honest. We're just two guys, okay, trying to get along in this world, and there's so much pain and hurt out there, and I know that we've all been brought up in different cultures, different parts of the world. We've all got different biases and things in life, But if we can find something to gather around together, whether that's service to one another, and whatever you want to call it, but just drop the the authority routine. Like it was said earlier, we know you've not seen Jesus. You call yourself a special witness, but yeah, it is what it is. And I said to my wife, if it wasn't for the 100% truth claims of the church, the just authority kind of under the thumb nature, then I would have been okay maybe raising my kids closer to the church, but I just don't want that for them growing up. So I've
Julian?
and, sorry, go on.
Go on, yeah, because the apostle would have walked on by this point.
Yeah.
Julian?
Yeah, look, we give Peter a hard time. The reality is we'd all have to kidnap him.
Yes.
We'd all have to kidnap him because so let me just say I don't believe that the church is true. I don't believe that. I think there's probably not a God. I think if there is, then I don't really think he's the Mormon God, or I really hope he's not, because he can be a bit of a he's not always very nice. And I know that I'm gonna upset some people by saying this, but I think that these people, the apostles, for all of the bad that they do, I don't think that they're bad people. I think, or at least I should say, I think that they genuinely think that they're good people, and in a way, that's all that matters, isn't it? No one does these things because they're intentionally trying to be bad. I think they think that they're good people, and so there's not a lot of point in really kind of going up to somebody and saying to them, "You're wrong," and I'm going to tell you how you're wrong, because it wouldn't really get me anywhere. What I think I'd love to do is put my arm around them, and say, "Look, it's okay. Be brave. Be brave." I know it's hard for you to maybe consider that the way that you view things isn't correct, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. You can, just like P. Diddy said, you can make that admission. You can say, "I haven't seen God. I'm just like you. I struggle with things. I've got my own problems, my own sins, and I'm just trying to do the right thing." And we can take it. We will be okay. You can tell us, this isn't the true church, and we'll be okay with that. Like I say, there are lots and lots of other religious systems and churches that function under that kind of framework. We will be okay. And actually, I think if they did that, we could all maybe give a big sigh of relief and go, "Oh, okay. So where do we go from now then? How can we now make things a little bit healthier and a little bit better?" And I think that's what I'd want to do. I just want to put my arm around him and say, "It's okay. I understand. Be brave. We can do this."
Right. I think that's great. I think that compassion in the face of that sort of conversation would be quite good, versus just telling them they're wrong. Peter and then Jane, because you said you'd come back up with something.
The founders, yes, I have. Sorry, the founders of the I'm being very British. I'm sorry. The founders of the church had that idea, Julian. That's why I'm still a member. There's people in the comments asking, "Why on earth do you believe then?" The founders of this religion said all truth is Mormonism, wherever it comes from. And there's one line in the Book of Mormon that says God has spoken to all nations, even the non-Israelite ones, and given them truth. So that is a way to have a completely future-proofed religion. It takes on board all truth, all science, every truth, every religion has had. And that idea alone makes Mormonism potentially unique, even though the current leadership have gone in the totally opposite direction. So just to sort of follow up from that ideal is potentially there for us, even though it doesn't seem like it. It is something that the founders taught. I actually did this. So my only in my life chance to do something similar to this was Gary Sabin, as a member of the Europe Area Presidency, came and reorganized our stake and appointed the lovely stake president who excommunicated me a few years ago. And in a priesthood training session, he'd talked about, I'd raised the issue about, can we create a safe space here at church for people with questions who need them answered? We have nowhere that people can bring their questions and actually be taken seriously or get answers, the same old problems. So I raised that. Mm-hmm. And on the way out, sort of doing the handshakey thing, he said, well, do you know about the gospel topics essays? And I said, well, yes, but the problem is they destroy people's testimonies because they basically admit the anti-Mormons were right all along. And you have provided no pastoral support whatsoever for people to process that. There's no program, there's no manual, there is no instruction that this is how you help people who've read the gospel topics essays to cope, because it's an encounter with the real honest history of the church, or rather half of the honest history of the church. And so in a way it comes back to that idea of healing the relationship. It would be simply, I'd say, you have got to take responsibility for this. You've farmed it out. You've delegated it to these tame historians and the apologists who are floundering around, trying to be realistic, but you keep stabbing them in the back and firing them from BYU like they did to Fiona Givens. Mm-hmm. You leaders need to take responsibility for the apologetics, for what is taught, for actually understanding the harm all this does. You need to provide a pastoral program to make it safe to stay in this church and have questions and have them answered and have diversity of opinion. You've got to at least have some, you're great at coming up with programs, come up with a program for that. And in doing so, they will have to have a reality check about how bad it has got and how bad what the curriculum they issue is and how it's killing the church. So that would be where I'd start with them, I think. Yeah.
Smashing. And then Jane.
Well, just as a preamble to what I would say if I had the opportunity, I'm thinking a lot about Mary in the comments, who clearly, like me, has spent life having to justify your presence, having to remind people that you're here, that you exist, that your presence, that your country is valid and is worthy of a mention on someone's lips. I'm going to take a wander through the comments later on after it, because I'm really looking forward to seeing what the discussion has been tonight. But that idea of being able to speak is something that's really important to me. Having a voice is really important to me. This church that I converted to is the language that I speak to God. That's the one that works for me. There are other ways I can do that, but I feel like there is so much potential here that the ideas that drove me to want to affiliate with it are still worthy and valid ideas. But I think that when I say Tapala Vahashan, that I was forbidden, that our nation was forbidden to speak our own language, to literally be silenced. That when Ireland, when Scotland, when the Celtic countries were, we were raised being, we were created being taught that our presence is less valuable than the land, that that people are of less value and worth than animals, that we had to fight to justify our presence. And so when I have to speak about being a member of this church in the British Isles and justifying our existence, it's something that I feel really passionate about. I feel like while through Celtic history, women have been at the forefront of women's protests, that it was women in communities who led that protest. Part of what I've had to do is to start a podcast. I had no intention of starting a podcast. I get so sick of seeing that people had no place to go, nowhere to talk, that church members were burnt out and weren't listening anymore, had no intention of using technology to creatively address problems that they were seeing. No leadership was demonstrating how that is done. So we have to get creative, and we have to say, look, this is not working. Even when someone doesn't like hearing it, telling someone they're getting something wrong is really painful. I love how Julian addressed, telling someone it's okay. I know that this is really hard just now, addressing that with compassion. The church is in a terrible place just now in the UK. And what I always come back to is that these are people. These are people's names. I can tell you, I can rhyme off, off the top of my head, a list of 50 people who I love, who've experienced real trauma because they are not being spiritually fed, or because there's been a betrayal of trust, or they're just brokenhearted. They have gone through hell, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And so there needs to be a place. And ideally, that should be a place that's near the feet of Christ. That's what I promised that I would make sure that I would play my part in creating that space. So it's important to me. That said, the work that is being done needs to happen out with the church as well as inside the church. I have very little that I can do in myself because I don't hold priesthood. I don't have a high authority calling. People aren't listening to me. So what we do is, like the women, like my ancestors, like Mary's ancestors, we will creatively address the problems in our own communities, our own areas, our own countries, and we will protest, and we will amplify voices, and we will speak. We will speak. And so what I would say then to an apostle is, come outside and see.
Okay, thank you. And someone said something really lovely to you, Jane, in the comments here. Sean McKee said, British Mormon Rescue, this is brilliant. The British Isles are doing their own rescue. No need to send apostles out from Utah. Brilliant. Amen, Jane. And I think you're right. We know the people. We know their names. We know their struggles. What we need support from the leadership. That's what I would say to them. I would say, please support us. Please enable us to do what we can for those around us. We all have our reasons for being involved with Mormonism. We all have our own personal beliefs and values. But I think for many of us, this is about those around us, those that we share this space with and this journey with. And we have to take care of those people because we have to lift where we stand. As Uchtdorf once said, we have to just make the best of things where we are, and we need to be enabled and empowered in that. And that's what they could give us with the resources and everything that they have. They could give us that. So that's what I would ask for. I'd say, please enable us. Please support us. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been brilliant. I've really enjoyed this. And thank you all for giving up your Sunday evening to be here. I'm going to run back round in the reverse of the order just went in for people to tell the folks at home where you are, where they can find you, and then I will quickly type stuff in the show notes a little bit later. So Jane, where can we find you?
So we have the 21st Century Saints YouTube channel, 21st Century Saints Facebook page. We podcast generally on a Wednesday night. We're hanging out on Instagram and on TikTok, and it would be great to hear from you.
There you go. Thank you. Peter, where can we find you?
So, Mormon Civil War, which is a podcast and YouTube channel, and on Facebook as well, as nice. Myself.
Julian. Yeah, it's Julian.
I don't want people to find me. I'm
cool.
hiding in my house.
Leave Julian alone.
Yeah.
Just like that old video about Brittany.
So I think we've got some exciting things planned for Sunstone UK. If you're not already a member, then join the Facebook group. We've also got Sunstone UK discussions group, which is a private. Is that right? Private group? Is that what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's what you mean.
Where you can say whatever you want, and it's not kind of there on display for the whole of the internet to see. Jane's language on the private discussion, I'll tell you, it's quite fruity at times.
I say flip a lot. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, so if you're not already a member of those groups, then join us, join that community. It's a fantastic community. We're planning some more in-person events very soon, so watch this space.
Nice. PD?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and all of those social media things. Also on YouTube, we have an after dinner chat series. I know some people in the comments were wanting to have their voice on the after dinner chat. We chat with anyone from TBM to Son of Perdition. So if you want to come on and have a chat, email me at waroffice at priesthooddispatches.com. Donny.
There we go. Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Nemo.
Bye.